This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. It's the show where I talk, other people indulge me, then they talk, and then I always wish I had talked less. And it kind of goes on like that for a while. We talk about music, we talk about careers, we talk about, life, man. I think that's a big theme on here. Myself, the people I talk to, we can't really separate music, life, career, but we're working on it. Every week I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm happy to have you here with me. I hope you're doing well. I've got my old friends, my good friends, A Tribe Called Red on the show. Straight out of Canada, A Tribe Called Red combines the sounds of electronic music, dance music, hip-hop, the music of their indigenous roots, and they collaborate with artists and cultures around the globe. It's just one of the most interesting projects out there right now. I've loved their music since the first day I heard it. And I'm really stoked that we finally got together, got to catch up and get them on the show. And this year, A Tribe Called Red has been releasing a steady series of new singles. It's really a level up for their sound. And we talk about this a little in this conversation coming up. They've got a new album coming out. Right now, it's slated for February of 2020. And that's going to be their fourth album. And I'll set the scene a little bit of how we met up, what we talked about in just a second. Before I do, I got to let you know, Back to Back is brought to you today by my friends over at Serato. I've been using Serato products for the last 10 years, 10 plus years, and they have always been known for rock-solid reliability, crazy innovation, and excellent customer service. They're bringing all of that together for their new product, and this is for all my producers out there. It's Serato Studio. Serato Studio is a brand new beat-making tool that helps simplify the path to music production. The whole point of it is to help eliminate all of those frustrating technical roadblocks you can hit when you're just trying to get the idea out, get it out of your head and into the software. And they do that in a few different ways. First of all, if you've ever used Serato or even just seen a DJ using it, it's going to look instantly familiar to you. The visualizations, the effects, they've brought all of that expertise into Serato Studio. And it comes built in with tons of loops, effects, sample packs. They've got packs from some of your favorite artists, people like Flostradamus, legends like Just Blaze, and so many more. And right now, Serato Studio is free to try for the first 14 days. It's a fully featured trial, so you've got nothing to lose. So go check them out right now. www.serato.com/studio is where you can go grab it, and I think you're going to love it. So go check them out. That's www.serato.com/studio. All right, so for today's episode with A Tribe Called Red, they were in town in D.C. where I'm living, and they were actually here playing at the Kennedy Center. If you're not familiar, the Kennedy Center, one of the most prestigious places a musician could perform in the whole country. And it is very rare to see DJs there, to see anyone making electronic music. So that should give you an idea of the level that A Tribe Called Red are playing on. And we met up, I think, like less than half an hour after they got on stage. They ran back to the hotel to meet me. It was late at night. It was the only time we could figure out to do it. But man, once we locked in, it was such a good vibe. It had been a while since we had seen each other. And we go back, probably a decade or more at this point. So A Tribe Called Red, they're from Ottawa, and there's just nobody who sounds like them. You know, they combine elements of electronic music, dance music, hip-hop, with elements of indigenous music, the amazing traditional drumming and vocals of the indigenous people. Back in the day, you know, they were kind of categorized as this dubstep act, this bass act. And since then, their sound has evolved so much, it's hard to even know what category to place them in. I actually asked them this in the conversation. You'll hear us talking about it. And where they're at with it now is that it's almost more of an attitude than it is a sound. It's almost more of a culture. And that's another reason I love them, is that they've never shied away from their politics. They've really figured out how to mix the party with the political, which is one of the hardest things to do in music. I mean, the biggest pop stars in the world, oftentimes, that's why their feeds, their content is kind of so bland and generic. It's because they don't want to offend anybody. They want to stay as far away from politics as possible. And A Tribe Called Red, I mean, they're all the way on the other side. They are speaking up. They are fighting the good fight. They're creating a space for not only their people, but they're really empowering people all over the world. And that's one of my favorite things about them, man. We get into that. We talk about the whole thing. I'm stoked to have them on the show. I've been wanting to have them for a while. And this is a unique episode. I think you're going to like this. And by the way, if you do like this, and in fact, if you like this show at all, if you think this is cool, if you want me to keep doing this, keep going, keep getting more awesome artists every single week out here on Back to Back, the best way you can support this show is just by spreading the word. The biggest way we grow is word of mouth. So if you do want to be a supporter, if you want to be a good Samaritan for the day, just let other people know you're listening, man. Put up a post, tag me in your stories. You know, I'm at Willy Joy. The show is at Back to Back Pod on all social media. And every time I see somebody tweeting, every time I get tagged in something, I'm always going to be reposting what you put up there, replying to you guys. I love talking to everybody out there. I've met some amazing people, had some really good conversations. You know, if you have any questions about what you're doing, about what's going on in your life, I love chopping it up, man. It's what I'm here for. You can also reach out to me directly. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address. You can let me know who you want to hear on the show. I mean, really anything. I'm around. Much love to everybody out there who's showing their support every week. I see you. I love you. And I'm excited to give you guys this week's episode. So let's get into it right now. This is me and A Tribe Called Red, back to back. Let's go. So how was the show? First of all, how was the show tonight? You guys just got off stage a little while ago, right?
Yeah. We rushed back here as quickly as we could afterwards.
Wow, that was sweet of you.
No, it was good.
It was over at the Kennedy Center?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy, man.
Yeah, it was part of like a festival that was just kicking off today there.
Met a lot of people that, you know, we've been fans of in the community. So, yeah, it was like a lot of indigenous people there.
That's dope, man. I mean, I'm sure you guys are used to this at this point, but I still remember, this was a long time ago. This is probably 10 years ago or maybe 8 years ago. I don't even know, Tim, if you were in the group yet.
No, I probably wasn't.
Yeah. When did you join?
That's about 6 years ago now.
It's about now, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Bear, you won't even remember this, but it was in Chicago when I was living out there, and you guys had a show, and I went out to the show, and it's just, some random show. I don't even remember the venue anymore, but it was rammed full of indigenous people, which in Chicago I had never seen ever before. It was mind blowing to me and made me look at the city in a whole new light. And it's an interesting thing because I think especially Americans, probably Canadians too, but the people who live in the major cities, the real the hearts of the major cities, you don't see a lot of indigenous people, even when they are there. You know what I mean? And your show is being sort of collecting points for that. It really did change my perspective on the city.
It's funny, I grew up with this idea of we're the invisible minority. That, unless you're there in something that is stereotypically seen as indigenous, you're not seen. And on top of that, there so often isn't space that we've claimed within the urban environment,
right.
Even though we've always been there since cities were forts, we were still, living at the gates and those kind of things. So, part of our mission has always been to bring about more visibility, claim more space, and bring Indigenous people together.
And I mean, part of that really is just sort of showing up, right? And being present and like providing that venue for people to come.
Exactly.
Right? So wild, because while you were saying that, it was making me think about other minority groups, and they're, each group, of course, has its own set of issues and situations, but there's lots of minority groups that have sort of carved out a niche in the mainstream culture, in pop culture. And then if I think about Indigenous people, all of the references that immediately come to my head are old, outdated, probably just total stereotype references. And it's interesting to think about that. Yeah, that you're right. There aren't as many sort of current cultural mainstream interactions, right?
That's not a mistake either. That's a very purposeful way of dealing with Indigenous people, because as soon as you start talking about Indigenous rights and start talking about, how these countries in North America were formed, it falls apart very quickly. So you have to kind of take the power away from Indigenous people to represent themselves.
That's really interesting. And, we should, before we get too deep into it, we should frame what we're even talking about. Because your guys' shows, if somebody just showed up and didn't know any of the politics behind it, didn't know anything about it, it's the same as what any of these other DJs are doing. It's like, it's a dance party. It's playing the music that you made. There's visuals. There's people jumping around, drinking, having a good time. It's one of those things. So say for a show like the one you just did at the Kennedy Center, which, Kennedy Center in DC sort of has this, that's a prestigious venue, right? And would you change your approach to your show when you're playing sort of like a cultural, quote unquote, event like that versus, a dirty nightclub? Or is it all kind of, is the message the same each time you hit the stage?
Yeah, the message is the same every time. We play for a specific crowd right off the get-go, claiming the space and but also having, all the Indigenous people there, we're playing for them, but we're still throwing a party at the same time. So, when the Electric Powwow, the party that started off Tribe first started, it was just meant to be a night for Indigenous people to come together and a club night. There wasn't even no powwow being played or no it was all just club music at the time. So it's just that's kind of where it comes from. So we come from it comes from a party background, but given that we have an opportunity to say some things and just be unapologetically us, then that kind of stuff just kind of seeps in through the music.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the Electric Powwow parties, which was in Ottawa at legendary Club Babylon. I was trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I attended that. I don't think I ever played it. I'd played a bunch of other shows at Babylon back in the day. Yeah. But I don't know. I hope I'm not making it up. I think I've been to at least one of them back in the day, just randomly. And, when you started that party, Bear, did you look at it politically back then, or was it more about what Tim just said, throwing a party, basically?
Yeah, the political part of it came after. It was definitely just okay, there was 4 of us in the group at the time who were all hardworking DJs in the city. I was probably the least hardworking of us all.
And nothing's changed.
DJing had actually started becoming more of a hobby. It's something I did a couple times a month, but was still the love of my life. But 3 other guys who were playing multiple nights in the city, and myself came together because, for no other reason than we were all Indigenous. It was kind of we knew each other, but we never gathered under that banner.
Right.
And we're like, well, and you were mentioning earlier about, so many other, minority groups who have claimed space in cities by throwing parties. And that was kind of like watching all these different people doing that was what inspired us to come together and kind of start promoting a party to our community.
Right. I'm ignorant about a lot of things, which will become apparent quickly. But how do you, to promote a party to an indigenous population, what was different about that than, just throwing any random party that you would see in a city?
Number one, we called it the electric powwow.
Well, let's even, for the people who don't know, let's define the terms. When we say powwow, what does that mean?
It's a cultural gathering. It's something that happens across North America. And there's drum groups. So that's a big drum with anywhere between 4 and 20 members, drummers and singers. And they'll have, anywhere from, 2 or 3 drums to, 10 more drums at a powwow, depending on how big it is, and then dancers, and all the dancers have different styles, and they could, we have competition powwows, so where they compete for prizes and money, as well as there's food vendors and craft and vendors and all that kind of stuff, and it's a gathering place and a celebration time. And the thing that fusing powwow music with dance music that was so kind of a no-brainer in a sense is that this is like the reason that powwow music exists is to dance and in a performative way. So like mixing that with dance culture, it was really similar things.
Where did you guys grow up? Because I'm curious, like, what your exposure was as kids to mainstream culture and to pop culture, and how that sort of got filtered to you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Me and Bear come from the same community. As far as like our families go, I grew up on the reserve. Bear grew up everywhere. It seems to be born in Buffalo, grew up in Toronto kind of thing. I grew up on Six Nations and like all my life. But I was friends and actually really close with Bear's family, which we didn't know I didn't know that was his family until I was about a year or so into the group.
That.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, because like when we tour around, we tour in Sprinter vans, and Bear usually sits up front, and I sit in the back. So having a conversation that way is really hard to do. But one day, like we were both in the back for some reason, and we had a long drive, so we just started talking. And I asked him about his last name, and then he told me who his family was, and I was just like, "Oh, I know them." In fact, like my father, he was I don't want to say like but he really took in his older cousin, and me and him became really close. He's really close. He's like an older brother to me.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just
I think what you said was, you mean Cleve, who had the TurboGrafx 16?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yo, Cleve got a TurboGrafx. He was the one dude that would get all
of it. That's my cousin.
Yeah, exactly. That's how, it was such big news. Cleve got a TurboGrafx 16. But yeah, I grew up on the res,
how many people live there?
That reserve is the largest in Canada for sure. So it's like around, at the time, it's probably like 20,000 plus.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. And like most communities kind of don't even really touch that number. It's a really big landmass. But it also has, our confederacy is made up of 6 nations. I'll just name them off: Cayuga, Mohawk, Oneida, Seneca, Onondaga, and Tuscarora. And it's the only community really that has all 6 combined inside. Yeah, because you'll see you'll have like an Oneida Reserve just outside of London, Ontario. You have a Mohawk Reserve just outside of Montreal. But the populations are very, very, it's much smaller than that. But
sure.
But yeah, grew up there. It was awesome. A lot of country music, a lot of blues, a lot of rock.
Is the reserve close to the city, or does it feel kind of removed?
No, it's actually one of the closer reserves. Like it's closer to cities. Like we're not only did we have small towns like just over the train tracks. There was there was a line there where it was like you were in Brant County, or then over the train tracks you were in Sovereign Land, which was like the Six Nations Reserve. But the Toronto was like an hour and a half away.
Okay.
Hamilton, which is like a smaller little city beside it, was like 40 minutes away.
Right.
So we were like very, very close to each other.
So you were saying there's a bunch of country music, blues music.
Mm-hmm.
How would that reach you? Was there like a particular record store or a particular radio station or anything that was really influential? Yeah,
the local radio station was huge. And they would play country all day, and they'd play rock. And actually the first time that I ever heard another native guy making beats was someone played a hip hop song on the radio station, which is odd to begin with.
Right.
So it stuck out, and I found out that they were from my res, and I sought him out and became friends with him. And the guy that helped him start making beats gave me like Sonic Foundry Acid Pro 1 and Cool Edit 1.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean?
Version 1.
Yeah, gave me those tools with shout out to Peter Quinsgard. He was the guy that... but yeah.
How old were you?
Oh, man, I was 16.
Okay.
15, 16. I'm 35 now, so that's almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, half your life, man.
Damn. Yeah,
More than half.
Yeah, but that's kind of where it started. And then just took off from there. And I would go to Toronto. I needed to to work with other artists, or to I guess cut my teeth in like the music that I wanted to make, which is mostly hip hop stuff. So
right,
I'd go into sign up for beat battles, or I made a project and I released it on this website called hiphopcanada.com back in the day, and it did very well. And it was a time when Drake was just popping. So he had like this album called Comeback Season, and we knocked it out of number one.
Oh,
and
man.
It was number one for a minute. But then he dropped So Far Gone, and then he blew up, and no one cared about the project after that.
But hey, man, as long as you can get that old magazine clipping of like you number one, Drake number two.
I think I took a screenshot one time. I don't know where it is. It's on a hard drive, like probably way back in the day. It was pretty cool.
You just got to frame that, man.
Yeah. And then once that project came out, I got a little bit of a name in Toronto, and so a lot of the producers really, really liked my stuff. So I became friends with a lot of them, which I'm still friends with today. And I became part of the community that way. And then I had to go to like an urban setting to be immersed into that, to really fully hone my skills and like learning from other producers.
And was that always your goal? Like, if you think back to when you were 16 and you first got that software, how did it evolve for you to go from that starting point to end up, with a number one album for production?
I have no idea, man. It was I just loved doing it, right? So It was something that I really called me, and it probably came from a lot. Like my uncle was part of like the first soul funk band on the Reserve, which I meant. So it's blues, country, rock, right? So soul funk was totally like out of the norm. But he also introduced me like Prince and Michael Jackson, and so like he really pushed that on me, and I think that's where the musical part came in. But hip hop was something that I really loved to do, and programming, and so just getting into that. And
how seriously did you take it at the start? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, in terms of it being your career, like, was that right off the bat? You were like, this is all I want to do? Yeah,
I think so. I think that's, it was something, 16 years old, and I didn't really get into too much trouble as a kid. So I just really went back to my bedroom and like, just made beats. I was like the 5 beats a day for 3 summers kind of person,
Wow.
Until like, when I got 19, 20, then that's when things started to really take off, and I started to get more ambitious and, get a job and make more money so I could buy more equipment kind of thing. And then when the album came out and that kind of stuff happened, a lot of Toronto artists wanted to work with me after that, so I made them come to Six Nations.
Oh, that's cool.
So a lot of Toronto artists came to Six Nations to work, and a lot of them were like, "Oh man, this is just an experience to be here," because there's so much stigma with like you know, it's not safe on the res if you're not from there kind of thing. Like there was a lot of stuff with that, but like, you know, they came and they understood, met my family, and they were all cool.
How did your family feel about you pursuing that path?
They didn't really like it as much, you know. I was on my way to be a language teacher. My father can speak fluent Cayuga, and I learned it, and then I learned it right away. And I just had this like duty inside my mind that, you know, this was a responsibility I had, and I had to contribute back to the community because the language wasn't doing very well. And
I have to imagine if it's all 6 nations together, that's probably even tougher, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like each nation kind of has their delegate or their people that are trying to learn their separate language to help bring it back up.
How different are the languages? Is it the kind of thing where if you know one, you can have an idea of what another one's saying?
Exactly. There's 5 of them that have very similar. And the only one that's different is Tuscarora because they came in later. So they have a whole completely different language. But, you know, we've kind of adopted them into the Confederacy, so they're a part of our family. But yeah, all 5 nations, they all kind of sound the same. Like, I love you. How I grew up saying it in Cayuga, Ganokwa. How you say it in Mohawk, where I'm from, is Ganolunkwa.
Okay.
So it's sort of the similar.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you heard someone say Ganolunkwa, you would know that it's I love you. Yeah. Stuff like that. But yeah, that's the kind of politics that was back there. And so I was going to be a teacher. I was totally en route. I even taught, like when I was in high school, I actually taught high school classes that I was there. You know, I taught, if the teacher was sick or something, I would teach the class.
Yeah.
And maybe a grade higher than me and stuff. Did like university lectures and stuff. Like it was pretty serious.
Wow.
And then I think I got burnt out. I was realizing that I was taking on quite a big role, and I was too young to deal with it. And I liked music around 16. So then when the album started doing good and things started going good, I thought I might have a shot at this. I was like, I kind of want to explore this.
Right.
And yeah, they weren't very happy. You know, they weren't very happy with me, like not continuing on doing this thing. But at the same time, I managed to like use the same exact culture stuff that I've been growing up with, and then using the music that I've been learning for so long. And I kind of combined them. And then I came to Tribe kind of at the right time.
Sure.
Really.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing too, is, you know, what did you know about the group before you joined it? You know, how much about them did you know? Had you been watching them for a while? Did you know the other people in the group already?
Yeah, I met Dan General Shub was he was from my res too, and his family was there. Generals are a big name on the res, same as Thomas.
You guys already knew each other.
Yeah. So he was the one, I think, that would like ask me for beats and stuff to play at the parties that they were talking about. So I'd send him beats and stuff, and because they were looking for indigenous content to play.
Right.
And I had no idea that, you know, that would be a thing, really, to be honest, for sure.
Of course, yeah.
And then I met Bear. I was doing a show with the same artist, the album that I did. I got a live band together, and we did a show at a powwow, actually, the Toronto powwow. Yeah,
well, it was
at Hamilton powwow.
The Toronto/Hamilton powwow.
Yeah.
It was Redskin magazine.
That's right. So they brought us together, and I did this show with a full horn section and like a band. It was awesome. And then Dan.
It was just Dan and I, for sure.
Yeah, Dan and Bear were there. So like I bought their shirts and I got to see them DJ for the first time. But like I knew about the music along for a bit, but I've never really seen them play except for that show.
Right.
And it wasn't until I started hanging with them really hard, and I remember specifically, it was like we were together in Winnipeg all together. One of the first times we really started hanging out really hard, and they played a show, and I just remember seeing, you know, all 3 of them up there, and, you know, the crowd was probably 80%, you know, indigenous, and just looking at everybody's faces and like the enjoyment, but it was something special. You know, you could see like a proudness in them, and like you could see right away that it was important. You know what I mean? And like I was sold from that point on.
Yeah.
And then we got into a studio, and then we actually started collaborating. We did some music and just messing around kind of thing. And they wanted to bring me on the next project that they were doing and wanted to collaborate. And that's kind of where it all started from that point on.
Yeah, and that relationship just kind of evolved from there. And so if we take that moment and freeze that for a minute, Bear, how about you? You know, before that moment happens, like, so you said you were born in Buffalo, is that right?
Yeah.
And moved around a bit.
Yeah, I was born in Buffalo, lived there until I was 7. And then I moved to Toronto. My family moved there because I'm like an arts brat. My mom's an actor. My dad's a photographer.
Interesting.
And my mom got a job being the second artistic director of Native Earth, which was, or still is, a Native theater organization, and one of the first in Toronto, in Canada. So in Toronto in the 80s, that was kind of like, I'd almost say it was the equivalent to what we're involved in now in the music scene. You know, like there was really a time when indigenous artists were claiming space in theater spaces and starting to find their voice that way.
Sure.
So,
and kind of a new generation as
well. Exactly. Like my mom would have been at that point like 25 or 20, 27 maybe kind of thing. Like, like when we moved to Toronto, it was really watching my mother become part of a community that built something that wasn't there before. And ever since I was a little kid, that's been my biggest dream. Was to be able to be part of my, you know, because I was kind of part of that. You know, I was a little kid, but I was around for some things that are now, you know, talked about as legendary times. But I wanted that for myself. I wanted to build something or be part of building something in the same fashion.
And how did you get into DJing?
Okay, so I've always been obsessed with music as far back as I can remember. Like as a little kid, going like record shopping and tape shopping with my dad was a big deal.
Okay.
And like, you know, I was raised around a lot of music.
What kind of music?
My dad's like really into jazz, like 70s kind of jazz and like funk. Like he's a big Earth, Wind and Fire and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with a lot of that around, and like he listened to a lot of Doors and stuff too. My dad's a photographer and always had a dark room, and that's like big memories of mine is sitting in the dark room in the dark, agitating trays with my dad, listening to his tapes.
Oh, that's cool, man.
But my dad, both my parents watching, you know, my interest in music and being artists themselves, they tried to get me into music programs from like a really young age. And it's just I was not skillful at playing music. That's not what I was made to do.
Yeah.
But my interest continued, and my family, you know, continued to help me be exposed to all sorts of crazy things. Because of my family being involved in festivals and stuff, I got to see Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan in a tent in like the early 90s or like maybe 89, you know, and like things like that I got exposed to really young. But after my parents split up, my dad moved to Winnipeg. This is in the mid 80s. My dad, knowing that I was so into music, he would send me things in the mail all the time. And a lot of wrestling magazines and McDonald's coupons, because those pissed my mom off a lot. But every once in a while, I'd get these tapes, and they would already be opened and listened to. And he was like, I really think you should be listening to this. And 2 of the tapes that he sent me that have, like, you know, influenced the rest of my life was Snap and the KLF.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those are, man, classic, like, 90s. I don't even know what you would call it. I mean, it's like Snap. It's like jock jams almost.
But it's also really deeper than that.
That's
too.
the thing, right?
And same with the KLF is like super deep. And like I've gone down like some serious KLF rabbit holes, and like really like their whole story with like the from the White Room album is one of the things that inspired the story for the Hallucination album. You know, actually, because you came for disorganized parties, right?
Yeah, back in the day.
So the Jokers of the Scene, who we kind of filled the void when they left. So a lot of things in our party were based off of what we saw them doing. And I mean, they brought such insane talent to Ottawa. Like, this kind of like weird capital city got to have all these amazing DJs come through because those guys were just, they were so involved in the music scene. And the record store, Organized Sound, was one of those spots that really influenced, I think, a lot of Ottawa's sound. And the kind of stuff that Linus was bringing into the shop and stuff. But a lot of what I've learned about this love of the KLF has always followed me. Linus Booth knows, like, more about it than I could ever tell.
See that. And for the listeners who might not know, we're talking about Ottawa. We're talking about this legendary club Babylon and Jokers of the Scene. I mean, it's so crazy because at this point, there's probably a whole generation of new listeners that don't even know Jokers of the Scene. But, back in the day, 10 years ago, at least certainly when I was coming up as a DJ, I mean, they were one of the biggest buzzing names in the scene, right? And, releases with all the big hot labels and really a group I think everyone was looking to kind of set the tone. And it's so, I don't know, man, it's weird to stick around the industry long enough to see like a whole life cycle of a group like that, right? Where, they really were like the hottest name in the scene for a minute. And then, they toured all over the world. They had all these influential releases that I think changed the game for, the biggest names out there who are still doing it. And now, like they're off doing the next thing, but they're not, like the group doesn't exist anymore. It's just a funny thing.
No, definitely.
Yeah, man.
But that influence, like, on Ottawa goes, like, all the way back to the 90s. Like that, I can't remember what year Organized Sound opened in, but it was definitely, like, late 90s.
Right. So, yeah, even before they were doing the DJ duo, they were running the record store and kind of helping the community grow, right?
I don't know if it's any more of a reference point for people listening, but Linus was kind of like the Dirty South Joe of Ottawa.
Sure.
He was the aggregator for the sound and for a lot of DJs and brought a lot of DJs together. And
absolutely. I mean, they were the first people who brought me to Ottawa. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I still remember those parties, man. I mean, Babylon is like it's just such a classic, like fucking dark, dirty, sweaty club.
Not only was it a huge part of me DJing, but like the disorganized parties were some of the first parties I knew where the VJing was a major part of the show.
Sure, that's a good point,
where sometimes they would just set up a huge screen for the entire stage and then play in the corner.
Right.
And that was the first place I ever VJ'd.
You're right. I didn't even think about that. But that era, we're talking about like late 2000s kind of, that really was when the visual component got a lot more prominent in the DJ culture, right? Not that there weren't people doing it before. I mean, I know like a lot of the turntablist guys and all that have been on that wave. But for mainstream culture, like when blog culture and hipster culture was really coming together with DJs, you're right. I never even thought about that, but the visuals became a bigger part of it right around that time too.
So like visuals being a huge part of our show.
Yeah.
The reason that we did visuals with Tribe Called Red was I had been starting to do this at Disorganized, but because of the Disorganized parties, they had these screens that another friend of mine made that could hook into the ceiling. On the sides of the stage. And that was left over from the Disorganized parties. So when we started our parties, it was like, well, I mean, we already have these hooks for the screens and I could set up some video kind of thing.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. And do you source all your own video and all that? Or do you probably have a VJ at this point, right?
No, I still do the VJ.
You still do all of it?
Yeah.
Man, that's wild.
It's like it's a different style of VJing than, like a lot of people do where, I don't do a lot of layering or even kind of like ad-libbing. I have images that are heavily treated that are timed for certain kinds of music.
Right.
So I have all my stuff that's at 108. I have all my stuff that's at 140. I have all my stuff that's at 135 or whatever. Like it's specific things that I know will work.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually really dope. I mean, I think that probably makes your show a lot tighter and a lot more cohesive, right? Is anytime the actual artist can be there controlling it. I remember back in the day, right when Flosstradamus was really, really hitting, like the trap thing was brand new, they were just exploding. And for the first 6 months they were touring, Kurt had figured out they had this it's just all strobe lights. It was like a dark room and nothing but strobe lights. It's kind of like a seizure, but he had figured out how to, I don't know how he did this, but he was running all the lights off of the mixer, off of a Pioneer, just standard, Pioneer 900. And so on one of the channels, or two of the channels, he was mixing the lights while the other two channels were mixing the music. And just watching him do that, it became such a more organic part of the show, right? Rather than, having a third guy off in the wings, triggering everything. That's cool. You've been able to maintain it through all the growth and bigger shows. And I've known you guys for so long, been going to these shows for so long. For people who might not know, talk a little bit about the experience of a Tribe Called Red show and, those visuals. Where do you even find those videos?
I'm just a media monster. I love film. I love TV stuff. And I have a huge collection of misrepresentations of indigenous people through the media.
Yeah.
It's another obsession of mine. And before Tribe started, I was working, I was a experimental filmmaker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I did, installations in galleries, video installations, as well as making short experimental films. So the focus of all the work I was doing then was looking at these misrepresentations of indigenous people through the media and recontextualizing them. Finding ways to take the negativity out and flip it around and make these things that were potentially damaging into something that you could laugh at,
right?
Into something that could be turned into something empowering. And so I had all these kind of ideas going into my film work already. So when we decided to add it to the show, it was at that time when we were figuring out very quickly that what we were doing was very political. So we started off, like we said earlier, just to throw a dance party. We wanted to be the next Disorganized. That's right. There was this scramble in Ottawa to say because Disorganized left such a huge void. And Jokers, they just packed up one day and moved to Toronto. They're like, we're out. Peace, guys. And so all these nights sprung up trying to take that. And, fortunately enough, Tim, the owner of Babylon, gave us the opportunity to have one of the Saturday nights. And so, like we were talking about earlier, kind of making a party for our community happens. But right away, the people who were showing up were like, you have to keep doing this. You've started something. You've created this safe space for indigenous people to come out and enjoy themselves. So you can't stop. That's when we first realized that we had stumbled into something political.
Was that moment exciting? Was it scary? Did you embrace it?
All of those things. Because there's a little bit, I think there was a little bit for us that was like, oh man.
Yeah.
We just want to throw a dance party. Then we start getting calls from CBC and newspapers and stuff. And right away, they want to talk to us about the political nature of what we're doing.
Right.
This, these young guys at the time have created this safe space. All these words started getting attached to what we were doing. We didn't start out talking about those those things.
Right. And I'm sure people were putting labels on it that weren't necessarily, people putting words in your mouth or intentions you might not have had.
So we had to learn to talk about it really quickly. Learning to talk about and assert ourselves that this is what we want. This is who we are. Like, right away, every photographer for any interview we ever did would take us to an alleyway, find a piece of graffiti, and be like, "Okay, now stare into the camera and don't smile." One guy even got as far as to like ask us to kneel down, and it's like, no, man, that's yeah, right. Like you're really trying to turn us into something here. So we knew we had to start taking control of our image right away. So we did our first photo shoot that we organized ourselves, and the photos that we chose that came out of it was all of us laughing. Like just like straight belly laughing. And that switch, that shift to go, we took pictures on a rooftop. So it's like a nice Ottawa sky backdrop and three guys laughing their asses off. That little thing was this huge shift. And now we've taken in our own hands how we're going to be represented. And that's something that indigenous people have never had the power for. And we said it earlier, we were talking about this as well, that how that is not a mistake. Because, you go back to portrait painting, photography, film, all of it was we've never had control of our own image.
Sure. I mean, you were talking about these film clips that you used in your visuals, right?
Yeah.
And, it's like, I remember one that always sticks out in my mind is some old 80s cartoon, right? That I'm sure was, made by white people. No, I'm sure no indigenous person was involved at any step of the process, right?
No, yeah, Brave Star.
Oh, there you go, Brave Star. But that for so many kids who didn't know anything else about indigenous people, that's what their image is, right?
The crazy thing now is that we're like that, going back 10 years to when we were starting, those were kind of new ideas. And we were, a lot of indigenous artists across the board were starting to take control of our own image. It was really the focus of a lot of people's work. So fast forward 10 years now, that's becoming like a normal thing. Another really good friend of ours just premiered a film at TIFF called Blood Quantum. And he wrote a zombie movie to talk about the blood quantum issues, to talk about colonization. And it's getting like huge attention right now.
Right.
And that's at a mainstream film festival. So
that's pretty amazing.
So this like newfound power that we have right now of being able to control our own image is doing more than than just what you're seeing here. You know what I mean? Like what we've managed to do, like that's happening like across the board.
That's so awesome to hear, man, because and you guys did that in a bunch of different ways, right? When I knew I was coming to talk to you, I was reading up, and am I right that you won the first Juno Award by an indigenous group that was not in an indigenous category?
I believe since they started the indigenous category.
Oh, okay.
Because like before they had it, there's there's a number of other artists who like Buffy St. Marie who have won in other categories. But since they started the indigenous Juno,
right?
Yeah, we were the first people to win outside of it.
And that's it. That's actually almost more interesting now that I know that. So Juno Awards, the Grammy Awards of Canada, when did they start the Indigenous Award? Do you know approximately?
I have no clue.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
But back,
I want to say though it's like early 2000s maybe.
Right. Yeah. And so here's my question, as a totally ignorant question, like, is having that category a good or a bad thing? Like, I'm sure that's a complicated question because, of course, you want more representation, you want it acknowledged, but then I could also see sort of every indigenous piece of art just being funneled into that category.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you got like electronic and you got like, rock, you got experimental, you got everything just thrown into that category.
And then maybe it's harder to break out of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't know. Not necessarily. You know, like there's a lot of people that have won that who have now like
gone on
to do great things. But it's a great little. I think it's just a great thing for recognition, especially for artists that maybe don't know, where they could fit. Because there's a lot of like unclassified music that's kind of going on. Like our other good friend Jeremy Dutcher did a whole record. He's an opera trained singer, but he sampled music from 100 years ago of his ancestors off wax cylinder recordings.
Wow.
And then kind of transposed that into modern like pianist this just music, and he sings alongside it. So you have this like opera trained singer that's taking the words of his ancestor, but then in the middle he'll trigger the vocals from the wax cylinder recordings and play piano along to that.
Wow.
And it's super powerful, and it's the same words, right?
I got to get you to send me the link. That sounds crazy.
It's an experience, man. I think everybody should at least take in Jeremy Dutcher. At least it's something. It's something that I don't know how to categorize it.
Right.
But that's for somebody that that might not know what kind of music it would be like that. That's a good place to go.
Yeah. True. Also,
there's like powwow drums that that submit their music as well. The very music that we sample sometimes.
right.
They submit for the awards and they win awards as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that to bring it back to what you guys do. Starting to sample powwow music and starting to sample traditional indigenous music. Was that sort of a no-brainer, or did you feel like conflicted at all at the start of, this sort of like this music that's set in, this years and years and years of tradition, sort of bringing it and combining it with, these newer sounds? Did you or anyone around you, was there pushback? Was there discussion about doing that at the start?
Definitely discussion. We're definitely aware that what we were stepping into was pushing boundaries. And we wanted to make sure we did that as carefully and respectfully as we could to still respect traditional protocols and those sort of things while also trying to grow something new. There's definitely been, not really pushback ever, but like you said, conversations, and we've been told by certain people that they're not comfortable with what we do or that they don't necessarily understand what we do, but they see the interaction with youth, and that's such an important thing. And keeping youth involved, interested, and proud in their culture is massive. So, it generally comes down to that, and that's kind of what made it okay. But we came along at a moment as well where I think the community was ready for it to be okay. But there was definitely a feeling when we started doing it of like, okay, we're going to inch this out there and how's everyone going to feel about it? And, but the reaction was massive. It's like the same thing as the reaction to the Electric Powwow Party. So many people from our community said, yeah, this is us. Because like the reason that we started, initially it was powwow mashups. The first one was a Jawdan Blackamore instrumental, so like a dubstep kind of like super dubby dubstep track,
old school dubstep.
Yeah, and we threw just a straight open part of a powwow song on top of it, so like where there was no drumming.
Right,
and it was like it was a grass dance song, which is already about 140 BPM, so we didn't even really have to adjust it. The whole reason that we were doing it was we had one of our first really big shows, this festival called Westfest in Ottawa, and they had organized to have traditional dancers on stage. So we wanted to make something for these traditional dancers to come out and dance to. The other part of why we wanted to, or really why we continued after that with it, was the Electric Powwow Parties had taken off and, were being embraced by the community. We were selling out every month. It was paying rent at that point.
Yeah, that's got to be nice.
and it was huge. And we wanted to give back. And we wanted to give back to the community that was showing us so much love. So the idea was to create something that could be enjoyed by everybody. So this is, dubstep was definitely, that was the sound of the moment.
Yep.
So we knew that, the general dance community was going to be interested in it, but automatically would be recognizable and claimed by indigenous people. And that's what people did. Like right away, people from our community were like, yes, this is us.
Yeah. And it's interesting, hearing you talk about incorporating the dubstep and sort of what was in hipster culture at the time, right? Like what was the hot sound. Did you sort of right away also become aware of, how you were being perceived by the mainstream culture? Obviously, you were providing this space, right? And this sound for young indigenous people, but it seemed like pretty quickly the whole project took off, and all of a sudden you're not only in front of indigenous people, you're touring the world, right? Or touring the country, playing shows all around. Did that sort of change your perception of what you were doing? Just in terms of like how people who didn't know anything about indigenous culture were looking at it.
I mean, I think we definitely had to find, like, again, sit down, think, and have conversations about what it meant to play this music for non-indigenous people. And I think, we've played a part in exposing a lot of people to powwow music who would have never heard of it before, even within Canada.
Yeah,
I think we've done a lot for like spreading just the knowledge of what powwow music is. So I think we were always able to say, like, if it's, as this quickly grew out of just our community, well, we're bringing our culture to people outside of our community who have no reference. Even if you don't buy into the stereotypes, what do you have to fill that space?
Yeah.
You don't have anything else as a touch point. So we were able to start to be that launching point for people's understanding or having more exposure to indigenous culture.
And it's important to note that, like I know we're talking about youth a lot, but, over the years, it's gone from little kids to like 80 years old, people in the clubs with us, like that's how it's grown. So it's been a big surprise, like over and over and over again to see the impact, I guess, of like who has come to the shows.
Right.
So it's really, really noticeable. Like, again, like why we do this. I guess.
Are you able to see? You guys have toured all over the world. You've played, all the festivals at this point. If you go and you do Coachella or something like that, are you able to see? How does a crowd like that, who's just like the most mainstream crowd there could possibly be at a Coachella or a Lollapalooza or something like that, how does their reaction to what you're doing compare to, when you're playing to a room full of people who are all on the same page?
I mean, the first thing you kind of notice, I think, is like when we start playing, the indigenous people in the crowd show themselves. So you'll see like a flag show up or a sign, or you'll see them out front, like they're everywhere. And like, we played shows in like, in France or in Paris, and they'll be there for school or vacation or something, and they'll come see us play. So that's kind of cool. But, we just try to keep the set like super tight and try to keep the music super interesting. Again, because it's a dance party,
right.
We're trying to like make everybody, have fun. And I don't know, like I guess the reaction from the people have been like it never really it's been a while since people have worn like a headdress to our shows or wear face paint. It's been about probably like 5 years since the last time I saw something like that, really, really blatant.
So like at the start though, people would kind of be ignorant like that, like wear a headdress
or face paint, or I mean, there's also, that was the time when that was the fashion accessory.
Yeah, of course. Well, and this is another thing, right? Is like it's almost like a meme, is like the white girl at Coachella with a headdress. To me it's almost a problem, right? Because when you have that stereotype, then when it actually happens in the real world, it's almost disarming. You know what I mean? like it's not seen as this negative thing because it's like almost this joke, you know? I don't know. It blows my mind sometimes. Like we're in DC, like the football team is still the Redskins, you know?
First show we ever played in DC was on Thanksgiving Day, and the Redskins were playing.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But I think you nailed it on the head with, over and over again, the conversations, the conversations have started, and, interviews get done. And like, I know Tribe's work, even before I was in the group, like just constantly talking about these subjects. In my first year of touring, we went to I never forget this. We went to Slovakia, and we played this crazy old metal refinery that's closed down. They turned it into like a big festival.
Okay.
We played. We went and shook hands with people after the show. This guy came up and was like, "Hey, I was, I'm super excited. I've been wanting to come see you guys play forever. I went out and bought a headdress specifically for this show. I was all proud to wear it. And then I was reading some articles, and I just, I found out that, it's inappropriate to do that. And so, I just wanted to let you know that, you've changed my perspective on this." And I was just like, wow, that's crazy, for that for someone like that. And it continues to happen to this day, because of the conversations that are being had, not just from us, but as a society, I guess.
Yeah.
Even club people, the club culture, everyone's talking, we all have these conversations about this stuff, and people are starting to get it and figuring it out for themselves right now.
Yeah, no, and that's a beautiful thing too, because I want to make sure I'm also not being reductive in saying that, I don't think people have to know all the background or all the history to enjoy your guys' music. I think it works on all levels, right? And that you can just show up not knowing anything and just have a blast because the music stands on its own outside of everything else. But then that you're able to sort of just subtly, if somebody just shows up to get drunk and dance around, that, maybe later on their experience that night sort of adds to their understanding of the larger issues. And
you nailed it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
You nailed it. The experience. Everybody has a different one, it seems, depending on what you come there for. If they get something they haven't got, if they understood something, they didn't understand from before, and they leave the show with a little bit more knowledge, sure. But if they had a great time, that's the main goal, want to make sure everybody is happy and danced out.
And do you guys, how do you see yourselves? Do you see yourselves as fitting in with any particular scene or sound or group outside of, indigenous people? Because I think about, earlier we were talking about the early days of the electric powwow parties and all of that. And there was this sort of moment when hipster culture and blog culture and what you guys were doing and what, just sort of electronic DJs in general were doing, mashing sounds together, that whole era, it all kind of came together. And for a minute, it was like, oh, we're all doing the same thing. We're all in this big family, right? And then from that, so many different scenes splintered off and so many artists went and did different things. Either then or now, do you see yourselves as part of any of those sounds, or do you think of what you do kind of just as its own separate thing?
I feel like we're on the outskirts of a lot of scenes.
Yeah.
We're kind of, what do you call those? The diagrams with the circles the Venn diagrams. Yeah. We definitely fit in the middle of one of those.
Right.
Somewhere, because when we started off, we were very much part of what was happening, in electronic music. I mean, it was a Diplo tweet that got us first, any kind of recognition.
Is that right?
Yeah. He just tweeted this track's cool. You should check it out.
Oh, man.
And then we got a feature on the Mad Decent blog. And so we were really quickly in that world.
Right.
We went down and we played a number of Mad Decent block parties and stuff like that. So, we opened for Major Lazer in their first couple of years.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Oh, it really, I think we learned a lot from being around them as well, as far as making a stage show,
Oh, man, yeah. Even back then, they were untouchable.
Definitely. But very quickly, we stopped getting asked back to those kind of parties. I think, you know, the myself and just in my own overthinking of it, I think it's like, because we had a political voice, because we're doing more, we might ruin the party because we have this whole other side to what we're doing. So very quickly, I found like that we were on the outskirts of what was the dance community. But then that also opened us up to cross over. We play folk festivals all the time.
Right.
Like last summer, we did a whole folk festival tour. So it's allowed us to move into other spaces as well. And I think now, if I would say we fit almost into somewhere in like the rebel music category, which doesn't really have a sound or a genre. It's just
it's more of an attitude.
Exactly. So since we say something, since we're always trying to bring, really a greater understanding of ourselves and other people, that puts us, in that sort of a space.
And it also like inspired us to embrace it and to push our boundaries as far as like musically to other places. And so the last 2 years, me and this guy have been in the studio really trying to like kind of look at Tribe as a whole and what it has been done. And even before me, and kind of bringing it all back together, to do things that are the classic Tribe sound to doing things we've never done before, different techniques, collaborating with different artists, producer friends that, we've been wanting to work with for so long. And that those things are starting to come into fruition now. And just more or less just me and this guy getting into a room and vibing for 2 weeks off tour and just seeing what happens.
Yeah, no expectations.
Yeah. And into like, all of this stuff and this openness kind of like led to us like, working with the Tonto synthesizer that exists at the National Music Center in Calgary. That's a legendary synth. And, even to be like, I guess inducted or a part of now Tonto's expanding headband. That's a crazy prestigious thing,
Well, and we were talking about this before we hit record, but give the Cliff's Notes versions for people who might not know. The Tonto synthesizer is sort of this, it's this like Frankenstein monster of a synthesizer, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit more than like a half circle of synth. It's like, it has like multiple Moogs, multiple ARPs, multiple Oberheims. Like it has like every single piece of vintage gear possible, all wired together powered by a jet wire, like Frankenstein for sure, and like, and they can all talk to each other. The whole thing is meant to talk to each other, but it's called the Tonto. It's the original New Timbral Orchestra.
Okay.
That's what it stands for. But yeah, we met it like about 5-6 years ago when I first joined.
Met it like it's a person.
Oh no, for sure. 100%. So like we there was a synthesizer museum, I guess, at the time, and they asked when we played a show in Calgary, they asked us if we wanted to go look at the synths. So you see every synth there, and you see like I think they had a piano from Elton John there, and they have like clavs and like the theremins and even the all-in-one crazy keyboard that the silent films used to have, the create soundtracks and stuff like that back in the day. So they had those, and they had the first drum machine, all of these crazy iconic machines. And then they saved the best for last, which was this Tonto, and it looked beat up at the time because it was like pieces of it were missing because they were repairing it.
Yeah.
And we just marveled in it and just was just in awe, like wow. And then we figured out right away what it was and how important that this thing was. And
When you said it was used on a lot of really legendary albums, right?
Yeah, the co-creator was Malcolm Cecil, producer for Stevie Wonder. So that, he was very instrumental in finding Stevie Wonder's sound on his first record. And then, from everywhere to like Gil Scott-Heron and Funkadelics and Isley Brothers, like anything with a crazy chunky synth, like guaranteed that it was a part of it. Also, the Expanding Headband, which is a legendary record that got released, and that was something that's special, for synthesis, I guess, and music in those days.
And it's really cool to think about, in this era where, between software and hardware, you could kind of have any sound you want at your fingertips, but it's cool to think about an era where you would almost have to make a pilgrimage to this, because there was only one of them, right? There's just this one Tonto synth, and if you want that sound, you have to go to it or bring it to you or the other. But I like that idea that, it's like you have to physically be right where the one thing is to get the one sound. It's a little more spiritual, I guess.
It was a relationship that with the place that, when we got it, it was something that we maintained. They would check in with us and be like, hey, just letting you know, Tonto's at 33% right now, on 55%, and it would grow as the years went on. It took like 5 years for us to actually get in front of it and work with it, but they surprised us and like actually got Malcolm Cecil to come to the studio session with us. So we were there for 2 weeks, learning with Malcolm.
And you were saying earlier that there was sort of a spiritual, philosophical component to the way he thought about music that influenced you guys while you were there?
100%.
What was that like?
It was, going into it kind of scared, because like coming from a person that's like learned inside the box and, going into a synthesis, like anybody who knows synthesis probably like, heard about this machine. And here we are going into it, kind of made like you were saying, made a lot of mistakes getting, but trying to find sound. So we kind of have a basic knowledge of it.
Right.
Going there and then him, telling Malcolm, full disclosure, this is what it is. And then him being like, okay, I got you. And then him,
us having no idea of what working with Malcolm was going to be like.
Yeah. And then we have like, it's crazy because like, I understand music from a math kind of way. And Bear understands it from like a very spiritual kind of way. So he was able to educate us about music and life and all of these things. And he was talking directly to us because he knew what kind of life we were living at the time and right now. And he knew exactly what to say, how to explain it to us that made it make sense. And
did he know your music? Do you know, like leading up to that?
I think he
hadn't really heard it until we got there.
Until we
had a day of just playing him our stuff. And he was like, okay, now I get it. I remember that at the end of like a day of playing him stuff. He's like, okay, I know what you need now. I understand. And I know how to help you.
Getting into that, those days and waking up and like going to see him in the afternoon. And mind you, he's like, what, 70 something? Yeah. And like, he was in the studio with us for 14, 15 hours sometimes.
Man. And he loved
it. He loved it.
He was burning us out.
It was amazing. And just to see a man that's like, really truly loved this. And, he's taken a lot of bumps in the industry too. I feel like maybe he doesn't even get the recognition that he properly deserves. And it's for sure. But like, that's not what it's about for him.
Right.
And, that fits very well into what we do, our philosophy too.
It goes back to that rebel music idea a little bit, right?
And Malcolm very much has that same kind of attitude.
Yeah, he was kind of like, he's a dreamer.
Right.
And to see at his age, dreaming and still saying like, I don't fully understand everything yet. But him knowing so much, just by being there. I mean, like from him playing a piano and then him talking about, you know, why he played it this way. And it might have took like 15 minutes of explaining, but then you fully got exactly what he was saying, and you understood why he played it that way. So the same way, like, we kind of understood why he built that synth,
right?
Why it did the things that it did. And what was crazy is that we were doing things to that synth that has never ever happened before. And he was like filming us and like so excited. He was like, I guess it comes from, you know, like not really going into it, not really, you know, like having like a technical experience with this.
Yeah. Not being formally trained, working with analog gear. Yeah. And
then we just kind of went in there and did it. And then if we needed to right now, I could go in there and set it up right now. And I never thought I would ever be able to do that. And it also educated me in ways that now when I touch a synth now, I know exactly what I'm doing. I got a crash course on synthesis with a dude, and now it's like I've gained these skills, and now we inject that into almost everything that we do now. We have a whole new philosophy, and it's just great to meet another soul that gets it on a musical, spiritual level that we do, because. You know,
well, yeah, that's got to be really refreshing. I mean, I've had those kind of moments, but I think we're talking about something else where you really meet someone who's just from a different background, different life experiences, different age, you know, all of that, but somehow you have that mental connection, you know, and that you're really just on the same page. Like when you started talking about rebel music earlier, I was thinking about the last album, the Hallucination album, and some of the guests you had on there, you know, people like Saul Williams, right? Or Yasiin Bey, aka Mos Def. Like all of those kinds of people, they fit into that same mold in my head.
100%.
Yeah. Well, how did you, just to touch on that for a second, you know, somebody like Mos Def, I probably shouldn't call him that anymore, but it's hard not to. How did you even meet him? Like, how were you in each other's orbits?
That comes down to the other feature on that, Narcy. So Narcy and Yasiin had already become friends. Just through the music industry. Yasiin is also Narcy's name.
Oh, okay.
So they were. That's why in our song you hear them say Yasiin and Yasiin. So Narcy got mad. He was like, I'm gonna have to change my name again, because he had just gone from being the narcissist to being Narcy. But it was because of him. He just we were in Montreal, I think for a gig, and we were all hanging out at a shoe store. Buddha Blaze, who's our tour manager, but who's also a DJ and a producer in his own right, was also Narcy's DJ. And Narcy just called him. He's like, "Hey, where are you at?" He's like, "Oh, we're at the shoe store with the guys." He's like, "Hold them there. Just keep them there for a little while. They gotta meet somebody." So Buddha's like, "Okay, well, we gotta hang around the store for a bit." Narcy's bringing somebody, and it was Yasiin. So that was kind of our first moment of meeting each other. And then I think he came to the show. Did he come to the show that night, or did you guys just meet up with him after?
No. We didn't meet up at all. Where was that? Is that
that's in Montreal. That was like later that night is what the first time I wasn't there. But you guys went to the studio after the show.
That's right.
And had a listening session with him. So I don't even think he came to our show. I think the guys just went and met him afterwards. He kind of fell in love with the music right away and got really excited about it. And the conversation kind of went on for a while, where he wanted to do something on one of our the electric powwow drum. This song had already been out for a while, and we kind of wanted to get him on something new. And it took about a year of meeting up with each other. There was Osheaga, the huge festival in Montreal, and he showed up at Osheaga and just managed to get on stage. Like he jumped on stage with us,
sure.
And him and Narcy just kind of freestyled on top of electric power drum. But he also jumped on stage with with Nas, yeah.
Oh, wow.
and Kendrick.
And Kendrick.
Right.
And then also somebody else dropped out and he got his own set.
Yeah, Action Bronson couldn't make it, so he got a 45-minute slot.
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
he was just all over.
It's really who's going to tell him no, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was really out of that meeting after that time where it was like, okay, we're definitely doing something together.
Yeah, we spent all day together that day. Like we were.
Was it a similar moment of connection that way, where again, somebody from a different world or a different sphere, like
There was an initial connection, but it took us a minute to get to know each other, really. But we knew that we knew there was something there, and it took really the next day. He said, "Let's get in the studio." So we actually canceled our flights and we went out a couple days after, and we booked studio time on a Monday and a Tuesday after Oshiega. And then we kind of like went there and did work with him. And it took like 3 hours of studio sessions of us like messing around. Like I think when we first got there, there was a drum set inside the vocal booth. And he came in before us. We were all together, but he came in like first.
Right.
So we went into the booth, checked it out, and then he asked the engineer to set up the drums. And so he actually just he got the drums all set up, mic'd them all up, and then he just played drums for about an hour.
oh wow.
Yeah. He just played breaks over and over and got him to record them because he said he wanted to use those breaks for his music.
Right.
And then after that, we kind of like, we went upstairs and we had a really open conversation about a little bit more deeper about what we're about and what we're talking about, some issues and stuff. And there was a lot of like feedback from both sides and good conversation. And then we came downstairs, the air was clear, and the song happened.
3 hours after that.
Yeah. Also, notably, he recorded it on his microphone, Ruby. It's a red, old school mic, the ones you hold to your face.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He brought it.
He didn't have Ruby with him.
Oh,
he had to go get Ruby.
Wow.
So there was this 3 hour period where Yasiin had just disappeared and like he wasn't answering his phone. We didn't know where he was. Like it was just like, wow, I wonder if he's gonna come back, or was that it? But you were saying earlier about like what that meeting was like and the connection like at Oshiega, because I really feel that's where we really got to know each other. And one thing I noticed about Yasiin right away is he's got like a 2-meter force field radius.
Really?
Where he doesn't really let people in his space. And he does it really by like just, not paying attention to people.
Yeah.
If somebody ran, like you're saying, if you automatically want to call him Mos. And if somebody ran up and we were like, hey, Mos, he just didn't hear it. That was outside of the bubble.
Right.
And he really let us inside of that bubble that day. So we were inside the 2-meter radius force field with him. That's the way it felt.
Yeah,
and I think the connection
huge,
came from that we were there for him as well that day. That we were there to be the crew,
right?
And to
help
keep that buffer going.
That's a weird thing. I think with a certain level of fame in general is I know a bunch of famous people who all have that kind of. That the 1,000-yard stare or that bubble or whatever you want to call it. And then when you are able to sort of break through that and make a human connection, sometimes I almost feel like the person themselves is more appreciative of it, because for whatever reason, they've just been around too many people and just don't expect to make those connections on a day-to-day basis anymore.
Or expect things out of humans,
Sure,
like
of
certain
course.
things too.
Because
when
you're
them
super
too.
famous, like everybody's asking you for things, right? I think you end up looking at almost every interaction as like transactional in a way.
Yeah.
And so to bring it back to you guys now, you mentioned the Tanto synth and collaborating with a bunch of other artists. Can we talk about you are working on the next album at this point?
Yeah, we got something going on right now. Let's just say that 2 years worth of studio time, we ended up with a lot more songs than we anticipated. And it's kind of the reason why you're hearing us dropping a track a month these days. We've done a lot of work, and I think that we have a lot of ideas, And we've been just kind of getting in the studio and kind of finishing those ideas and specific songs that are for now. It's crazy, but we have some stuff in the bank that is kind of timeless for us, and it's a whole new direction. So it's a big jump from this last record to the stuff that we were making. So we wanted to release some new music. So that's kind of like we're releasing these singles, I guess.
Sure.
And a lot of them are also taking steps in directions that we've never done before.
Right.
Like we just released the first ever powwow cumbia track with Al Dusty from
I saw that.
From Corpus Christi. And that was a collaboration that we've been wanting to do for a long time. And we ended up just playing Tropicoso, right? The party? Yeah, we played his party in Corpus Christi and spent like 4 days with him out there and just in the studio, hung out with the mayor of Corpus because he legit owns like a block of Corpus and like he has like a store, a taco truck and types of stuff. Yeah, man, he just walked, like he's that guy there. And he has this amazing studio and we just sat there and made music the entire time. Really got to know each other too.
Yeah, well, I think for any kind of, like cultural collaboration like that, that's so important. I mean, goes back to this idea of like conversation and discourse that we've been talking about the whole time. Is that something you're interested in doing more of in the future in terms of not just hybridizing musical styles, but actually like different musical cultures, if that makes sense? Like a cumbia powwow track. I don't think there's any precedent for that. Would you be interested in working in other styles of music like that are also rooted in other cultures? You know what I mean?
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went to New Zealand last year, really just to play one show, but more so to go and collaborate with an artist there named Rob Ruha. So getting in the studio with him and recording, sounds, all kinds of sounds from his culture, from Maori culture. So even like, the sounds that the grass skirts that they wear make, and the different instruments and percussion things that they use, as well as the kind of human sounds and stuff you hear in Haka, like stomping and clapping and that kind of stuff. And definitely working with other artists who use their culture in their music. We really see those people as our counterparts, regardless of the style. If you're out there finding ways to use your traditional culture and your traditional knowledge in music, that's kind of, those are the people we want to get in the studio with.
That's our MO.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it is gone, even like in the last record at the Hallucination album, we worked with a Sami artist from Sweden, so like just and we went into her world, and kind of brought her into ours at the same time. But what's crazy about it? Like in the age of like phoning in features and getting emails, sessions back and forth. We haven't done that yet. Like we've all collaborated in like face to face.
Really?
And so that's been something I just realized that's something that we've been doing, but like.
So you've never sent stems, set a Dropbox link to somebody across the world and just made a track like that?
No, not yet.
It always starts in like face to face, even if it gets finished by sending stuff back and forth sometimes.
Right.
But we always get in the studio, it seems.
Yeah. It always ends up that way. Even like, we've tried to do that. We tried to work with Oka. They would send like stems to us and to remix and stuff, and it just never worked out. It never worked out until we went to Australia and worked with them in studio. We were only with them for like 5 hours, 6 hours in studio, but we ended up getting enough stuff out of that session to like make the joint that we made for the last record. So, it's an interesting thing that we've been doing.
That is interesting.
Very organic in a way.
Yeah. That's kind of wild. Is that something you want to continue?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, it's like if we can avoid, like sending stuff over internet. I think and that'd be the best. But we've also like established relationships with people, and we know their chemistry is good, and so.
That's the key part of it, is establishing these relationships. And again, this comes up in our talk, but the conversations, sitting down and talking to people about what we want to accomplish. Because even if our music isn't saying it directly, and even if the collaboration that we do isn't making some big political statement, the statement's embedded in what we do. And the intention has to be there. One thing that we realized about ourselves is that Tim and I can't create without intention. If we try to get in the studio and just do stuff for no reason, we get lost. And we don't make good things. Right. Yeah. We were doing a remix for this song Northern Touch. Northern Touch was like kind of a big step in Canadian hip hop, where like all the big names of the moment got together and did like a big posse track. And it had its 20th anniversary last year. So we got asked to do a remix for the 20th anniversary re-release. And we had a really hard time doing it. And one day, Tim and I, after a couple, I think it was like a 4 or 5 day session that didn't really produce anything that we were happy with. And we started talking about why we're having such a hard time, why we couldn't crack this track. And the idea came about that and we haven't, the second part of this idea hasn't fully come to fruition, but we wanted to take the remix and give that beat to a bunch of native hip hop artists and try to recreate that same Northern Touch experience and make a posse track of a bunch of native hip hop artists.
Right.
Although we have never fully finished that track, once we had that direction and we knew that there was another purpose to making it, then everything fell together.
Oh, buddy, the track was done in 4 hours after that.
When we had spent at least 2 weeks worth of studio time at that point.
Yeah, in multiple places. Yeah, like BC, we were in Vancouver for a minute, Toronto. It was wild, and then and it's that whole thing that drives us.
Well, and I mean, hearing you guys talk about, your creative process, your writing process, the ideas behind it, it seems like you're both really in sync with each other. And I guess I'm curious, on a personal level too, like A Tribe Called Red has had multiple members over the years. And talk about the group dynamic a little bit. Have you guys always been more or less on the same page as far as what you wanted to do with the group, where you wanted to take the sound, and sort of how do you navigate, the individual within the group?
I think it all kind of started out as me and Bear's relationship grew because we would conversate a lot about after shows. We would conversate about the type of music that we're listening to, the new song that came out, or even him schooling me, because I was just straight up hip hop and R&B and funk and soul, very shut out. Right. And then him having this humongous knowledge bank of music of all kinds, him bringing up an 80s tune and be like, yo, this kind of sounds like what you're doing. And I'd be just making beats or something. He's like, oh, this sounds like this. And now he played it. I'm like, God, it sounds exactly like that. What the hell? So he would he knew how to conversate with me in a way that was beyond words. It was very feeling based. And we've always had this chemistry between us. And I think as the times went on, it became really apparent that, it was just us two. We were doing a lot of work. And then, naturally, I think it just kind of it kind of made it this way. And it's so funny. One of the first ever studio sessions we've ever had together, they got me an Airbnb. They flew me out from Winnipeg to Ottawa. We got an Airbnb. We set up a studio, basically the Walter White, cooking session of setting up in the living room studio and waking up in the morning and just kind of making beats.
Right.
So I woke up in the morning one day and Bear was already downstairs because he stayed with me at the Airbnb. I came down. I'm like, hey, I have this idea. I need to lay it down. He was downstairs on the couch. I went to the computer, started making the song. And then it did this really weird phase, and then this melody came out. Bear heard it and immediately got on his computer. He's like, I got like, you know, he didn't say he had anything or did anything. And then the song got to the certain point, and then he's like, Tim, check this out. And then he played the piece from the Addams Family. Wednesday Addams does this Thanksgiving Day speech.
Oh, wow.
And It's Burn Your Village to the Ground was created from that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And that like super organic, you know, like just like, and we have these moments all the time. And, you know, we're cold in the studio sometimes too, you know, because we work a lot. I think that, you know, like, we're always working against the clock, it seems sometimes, because we don't have a lot of time because we're so busy doing touring and stuff like that, and trying to, you know, fulfill
you guys do
all
a
these
lot
dates.
of shows.
Yeah, we have, because you know what, like we noticed that we'll get hit up on our socials a lot of times saying like, you haven't been to San Diego in a year. When you guys coming back? And it's kind of like, then we have to like tell our manager like, hey man, like we should probably go play the West Coast and go to San Diego. It's been a while since we've been there. It's like we have to like, it's almost like back to that original Electric Powwow days, you know, like you can't stop this. You have to keep it going.
Yeah. There's a demand for that, for you to create that space.
Yeah,
right?
They want us to come back. So then, so that kind of happens. And but we get in the studio whenever we can, and like we just have this amazing chemistry, and we seem to be just getting better at it. Like it's just and I think it's more apparent with the new material that we've had. Like, you know, there's a lot of trust going on. There's a lot of experimenting going on as far as like sounds and new techniques. I feel like, you know, this thing that we're building right now is probably going to be the best work of Says Tribe's ever done so far. And
I can like see the excitement with you guys when you're talking about the new stuff. Which is awesome to see, you know, 4 albums in, that you can be, you know, even more excited like that over a long career. I think that's hard to do for you guys personally, you know, in terms of the lifestyle of it, like being on the tour life, you know, living out of hotels, on planes and all that. Where are you with that these days?
In a way, it's the downtime that gets harder and harder. Like you're on the road so much, and you have your road life dialed in. You know, I got Buddha who tells me when I got to be up, when I got to be in the lobby, when I got to get on a flight, and where I got to be tomorrow. Buddha decides where I'm going to eat tomorrow. You know, I go home and I got to start making those decisions on my own. That gets harder. Yeah.
It's to the point where you come home and you kind of feel lost for a little bit. It's like, okay, like, you know, you have all this food to cook, but like you just be like, well, I'll just go get a Tim Hortons sandwich, or, you know, I'll go get a sandwich.
That's the classic. Sandwich. 2 days of going to Tim Hortons for dinner because you can't figure out how to do anything else.
You know, how do you sort of cope with that a little bit? Because I relate to that too. I mean, sometimes you feel like sort of detached from your own home in a way, right?
I think the big thing is just, you know, like rather than worrying about it, just kind of accept it. And like just accept that this is life, and this is life for us right now. And, you know, it could change day to day. You know, you don't never know when, you know, like when something will just make you stop doing whatever you're doing, you know? So, yeah, we just go with the flow. Like I got a place in LA. So like that was kind of like out of nowhere decision, but like, you know, just trying to find like, you find your ways of like of what it is to relax for you, and where you want to spend your time, and who you want to spend it with. And time just becomes more important than money at this point, and it becomes more valuable than anything. And it's something that we have an abundance of. Also, our touring life, we don't party, we don't do anything. We don't do anything heavy. So like we're really. You can ride this wave. It's very, very sustainable, and it's like, you know, I don't feel like I'm losing control of anything, or like it just feels normal to me now. And I think that, you know, overthinking things and over examining things is kind of like for someone that, you know, like myself, is kind of like a head case. Like I'll live with it in my head and let it stew up. But I find just riding the wave and just letting it go, having someone like a tour manager tells you what's going, and that it's great. And then you can kind of like, when you have your moments, you can do whatever you want. Like I bring a studio with me. You know, I bring video games with me if I want to like play video games or work on music on the road. You find things to do and with your time.
But really changing the lifestyle, you know, like 6 years ago when we really stopped partying. You know, there's that moment where the party part ended and the career really started. You know, I think having longevity in an industry like this, it's not like we don't ever have fun and we don't ever go out, but, you know, we took the 2 bottles of vodka off the rider and, you know, and just like realized that, you know, when you're in this industry, every night is Friday night and every morning is Monday morning. You know, and then once you start thinking about it like that and start realizing, okay, this isn't sustainable. Another really good friend of ours put it as, she said, it's you go into a different town every day, so the people and the friends you know there, it's a special time for them. You're not always here, so let's go and do something fun. But it's Thursday for you. Right.
You know? And then you go and you could have all that fun, but then the next day you go to the next town, you're faced with the same predicament.
Everybody wants to celebrate every night.
Yeah.
So there was like tonight, people wanted us to come out. They're like, but we had the perfect out. We said, well, we have to go do Willy Joy's podcast. So there's no way we can come and party with you guys.
I'm happy to be your excuse. You can use me for that excuse anytime you want.
But it's an exciting time for us right now. Super creative, super inspired. We're playing new places we haven't played, and we're about to go to Mexico in a couple of weeks, doing a show that's not even a DJ set. Like we're actually bringing a Moog with us.
Oh, really?
And like playing instruments, and we're collaborating with another artist, Lidio Pimienta. She's gonna be out there, and she's gonna we're kind of gonna feed off each other for like 75 minutes.
Wow. And we just like live improvisational kind of stuff.
Basically. And you know what? We did it for a week. Right after the Tonto sessions. We played a run of performing arts centers in Ontario. And you know, the first show was kind of shaky, but everybody loved it. And then as the final show in Toronto came by, like it was a hit. And I think that last show actually is the reason why we're playing Mexico. You know what I mean? Like I think that this new idea of evolving tribe has been an experience. I think accepting the hallucination as a bigger thing than tribe itself, the universe, has been the big eye opener for us. We were able to like not put a cap on just being.
When you say
DJs.
The hallucination, for the people who don't know, what are we talking about there?
Oh yeah, John Trudell gave us a poem that called The Hallucination, like hallucination,
which ended up being the title of your third album.
Yeah,
and the concept really that drove the album.
Sure, back to that idea of like the narrative, right?
Yeah. So yeah, just an idea about a group of like-minded people, you know, on learning and practicing what it is to be human again. So it's like that concept seems to be a lot more bigger than what tribe could ever be, you know? And we're just like a conversation in that bubble. And then, you know, someone like Lido, who's a part of the family, the hallucination family as well, that's just another conversation. And so it seems like the more people we collaborate with, you know, like Yasiin and Saul Williams, you know, Tanya Tagak, like these are all people in this family of hallucination members that we have. And that world seems like almost like anything is possible. You don't really have to like, we're not stuck to being, you know, behind, you know, turntables. Like we could do other things as well. And so now we're exploring that kind of world. Also, like it was always our intentions to grow the performance part of our set as well. You know, that has grown over the years. we've taken things out and added more into it, giving ourselves more work to do. It's almost, I don't know why we're doing that. You know, like we're definitely like making ourselves work more. I mean, Bear's like VJing, DJing, you know, like, oh, let's put another mixer in front of him so he can dub things out, you know, like what, like, you know, so it's
well, part of it is that you got to keep challenging yourself, right? Just to keep it interesting, to keep yourself in the game. Because if you just keep doing the same, like you guys could do a DJ show, you know, every night of the year for the next 20 years and be comfortable with it. But at a certain point, I think when you start going on autopilot, then what you're making starts going on autopilot too.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, then that's what was happening, you know, in the time where we went from being a trio to being a duo, is that, you know, Tim and I were still interested in growing. We were still interested in challenging ourselves every night. And that's really what we connected on.
Right.
You know, and so that the transition was really easy, because when you have two people in a group who are pulling in the same direction already, well, there was a lot less to pull.
Yeah, of course.
And then now we're dealing with the hard part, which is like, we both want to challenge ourselves and give ourselves more work. So now we're at this point right now where we're kind of like, well, what else can we throw on our rider, or what else can we put on our decks that, you know, that we could do more. The dancers for our show is a big part of that. There's even Bear's like Bear constantly looks up more films, more video content to make. Like the set is always seems to be changing and evolving in some small, even in the smallest way.
Yeah.
It seems like just as we get comfortable and perfect something, we gotta go and mess it all up and do something to make it harder for ourselves. But it's fun. It's so much fun. And, you know, like, it's really awesome to know that, you know, someone who saw us 6 months ago isn't going to get the same show again.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's super valuable too. You know, as we start kind of bringing it home, what are your goals right now? I guess maybe each one of you guys give me a professional goal, something you're stoked about, something you want to make happen for the project, and give me a personal goal, something you're working on with yourself.
The professional goal, I would like to just try just to make it like I really, really, really see this next material as our best work yet. So the goal for that is just to keep growing and to forever evolve. And I hope that we never lose the spark that we have right now, because the spark's been going pretty bright for the last little bit. So, and this is super inspiring. And I hope that we just keep challenging ourselves and keep making better music than we did before. And I guess a personal goal, I don't know, man. I'd like to maybe one day take an extended period of just to see what's out there.
We talk about, you know, travel that's not work related kind of stuff.
Yeah, that would be nice, you know, and like, or maybe I don't know, pick up another hobby or something. You know, like should do something else.
Yeah. Hobbies are good, man. I preach about that a lot.
I kind of got like a lot of video games I need to play. I kind of want to just sit down and like beat a bunch of video games.
Back to the turbo graphics.
Exactly. I'm going to start collecting old video game systems.
I love it.
I'm going to rub it in Cleve's face too.
Bear, what about you?
I think goal for the group is you know, going back to what I was talking about with watching my mom in the theater community and watching that grow, is for Tribe and the community that we've begun to bring together continues to grow. And this idea of the hallucination, the goal, I think, for both Tim and I is for it to grow beyond us, that we really want to help, you know, bring in the next generation of artists. You know, hopefully there'll be, you know, young artists who want to become part of what we're doing and want to take on what we're doing. And maybe there's a time when Tim and I stop touring, but there's still a hallucination out there doing, you know, keeping up with these ideas and these values that John Trudell brought to our group.
I like that. That's, you know, maybe instead of, creating the space, now it's expanding the space,
exactly.
right?
We become, you know, the parents of the organization. And
don't say parents. we just got comfortable being uncles.
But that would also create the time and space for Tim to go and spend a lifetime playing video games.
And that's my big dream, right?
and personally, and being able to follow other personal projects. I think that's something that we both really have in the back of our minds for ourselves. And for me, it's getting back to things that aren't necessarily based in music. That I did have a film career that I moved away from, and I want to get back to that at some point. I have a lot of ideas for things I want to do for both children's programming and these ideas around indigenous sci-fi that I've been toying with for a long time. That worked its way into Hallucination and into some of the stories and videos that we told in that project. I want to write. I want to be a writer. I have ideas for a very extended story that could be applied to novels, film, comic books. These are all things that are like my other huge passions other than music. And I hope that I get a chance to pursue them as time goes on.
I love that, man. I'm a huge sci-fi guy too.
Awesome.
I love What We Do in the Shadows. Man. Yeah. Sure it is.
Well, that's what, and like Taika, that's a huge one for me, right? Like he's somebody that was already like a big deal, but was around the film festivals and stuff I was involved in when I was coming up. And now to watch him, go on to direct Thor, and,
right.
Watching the Shadows become a TV series, and now he just got an award for director at TIFF.
For Jojo Rabbit. So like watching again another indigenous director who's out there just smashing the world. So there's part of me that has this real longing for I was with these guys. Right. Jeff Barnaby, who did the Blood Quantum, another guy who was like part of this community that I was coming up in. My other friend Nyla, who's also doing another like sci-fi movie right now called Flashback that we're going to be doing the soundtrack for.
Oh, there you go.
So we're still involved, but I there's part of me that goes, man, I really wish that I was still there for that. But not to say that I'm not loving what I'm doing.
And the greatest thing about this, again, about me and this guy, we support each other for those dreams those things that we have. Like Bear's always kind of said, like, because I've produced other projects for other people, and he's been supportive of that. I've been supporting of like him doing his film, and like I think that we found the perfect chemistry here for I think making Tribe last forever, I think, at this point.
I mean, amen, man.
There's a lot of love in this group right now.
I can tell.
Between us, between the dancers, and like Angela and Cree who dance with us, and Buddha and Dutch who drives for us, and like we're a tight family right now.
Dutch is like a big shit, and like would he just work with the Rolling Stones?
Yeah, he's a stage manager for massive festivals. He just did the Rolling Stones show in Canada.
Wow. And yet he's like, I took a couple of weeks off to come like hang out with you guys on tour because I miss you guys. And we love him. We love him. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't make, this whole traveling thing. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
We have a family here that's like really, really big, and we all hold each other down. It's more than just us two, for sure. It's just there's a whole, from our manager G to even the family back home in Toronto that look after us, to everybody that's on the road, to our friends and who support us all the time, and it goes, and it's both ways, but there's a lot of giving and taking in this thing, and it just feels right.
Before we get out of here, is there anything we haven't talked about? Anything else you guys want to get out there? Anything else that's on your mind?
One thing that I saw recently, and I don't know if it's just like the Instagram algorithm or something, but I haven't seen the videos you used to do where it would be the sound check video and then cut to the night.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw one of those for the first time in a while.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know if you've been making them still, or if it's just my algorithm. I stopped
making them for a while. Yeah.
So I was really stoked to see that again, because it was like, I mean, it's been a couple of years. And so I just loved seeing
People love those, man. Yeah.
And just seeing that, you're still out here doing your thing.
Man, thank you.
And, it's awesome. Like I love it.
Thank you, man. No, I mean it's crazy how long we've known each other and how long we've just been in this game in general. And I'm in a similar position, man. I'm working on the new material right now too. I'm not rolling it out quite yet, but it's taking shape. And it's just the fact that we're still here and still excited about what we're doing and still feel like we're able to evolve and contribute to culture and all of that. I mean, I feel very lucky, man. Even just sitting here with you guys, like I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah, same.
It's a privilege to be able to tour around and like being able to like see people like you and like DC. I never thought that we'd see you out here, like that was a shock. And I was like, of course, we got to hang out. You know what I mean? And we have people like that all over.
Yeah.
And it's great to just run those bases sometimes and like, get the love from everyone.
100%, man. Just looking for a time in your life, just a memory, kind of the first thing that pops into your head, just a time when in a moment, music really had a deep effect on you. And it doesn't have to be like a super significant moment, just sort of the first thing that pops into your head.
Recently, before I moved to LA, a friend of mine heard that I was in LA and was like, "Oh, you're there? Good. I'm gonna set you up to meet Khalil. You really need to go meet Khalil." So there's this producer named DJ Khalil who I've looked up to my entire musical career, basically. I mean, even just music in general, my life. And he always said that we were the exact same. We talk the same. We have the same philosophies. When we work on music, it feels like we're the same person. So we got us together. I met him. We talked for like 7 hours.
Damn.
And like we ate barbecue. We talked about life, about our favorite beats. And then at the end of the night, he asked me if I wanted to work on some music. I just remember getting in the cab or in the Uber, going back to my apartheid or whatever we're staying in at the time. And I just remember crying. I was remembering something when I was like 16. It's like, if I could tell my 16-year-old self that this would be happening when I'm like, like 34, like how crazy is that? And I just remember that was one of those moments that, like the dream that, that you think of when you're like 16 years old on a res, making beats on a stereo system, like in just in a $200 crappy computer. And then there you are. And it's just kind of like, that was one of those moments where I was like, wow, this music really took me places.
That's beautiful, man. And it's more beautiful too that you're able to sort of acknowledge it and be in that moment. Because I feel like so often with what we do, we're running around, we're trying to get a million things done that, sometimes you can miss out when those things happen and not acknowledge them. So I'm glad you got to have that experience, man. That's really powerful.
Yeah, life-changing.
I don't know why this is what's sticking out of my head. It's a super like random memory.
No, that's perfect.
And this is like before I even started DJing. I must have been like 16 or 17, and a raver at some loft party in Toronto. There's two DJs who really inspired me, who were both from the same small town, Sugar Daddy Moth and Yarko, and they were both like played a lot of drum and bass and dubby stuff, but also like we're just doing really interesting mixes in their set, trying to bring in, really random music as well. And I would go and see them play anywhere at the time.
Yeah.
Like they were the guys that if they were on the bill, I was at the party. So I'm on the dance floor, probably on all kinds of substances, and at that point in the night where I'm hugging a speaker and, you want to like climb inside the speaker and just having one of those moments. And I feel this, and it's to Yarko playing. So Yarko is playing and I'm hugging this speaker and I probably got like my ear up against it and I feel this tap on my shoulder. I come back to reality and turn around, and it's Yarko tapping me on the shoulder, and he kind of grabs me by the arm, and he's like, "Come with me," and he marches me out into like the stairwell, and he starts giving me this speech about how I know you really want to be a DJ, I know you really want to make music. Don't do that. He's like, you're going to blow out your ears. You're going to give yourself shotgun ear, and you're not going to be able to DJ. You're not going to be able to do any of this stuff that you're dreaming of.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
2 years later, I was DJing.
Right.
So I think about that moment often.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's super, super valuable. Just on like a nerdy side of it, I mean, I always look at, super young kids coming to these shows and like, I want to play loud. Like I want people to be able to feel it, but at the same time, it took me years to learn that, you got to wear earplugs, you got to, take care of all that. That's really valuable to have that at such a young age. And it's in that kind of setting is hilarious. But
it was also that he saw that knowing that he saw that my dream and was able to say, if that's your dream, like you got to follow it. That's what to me, that's what he was saying.
Of course.
And I think that really,
and he just like kind of saw that in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's wild.
That's heavy.
Yeah. I
and
love
deep.
This has been great, man. I love you guys. It's great to see you. Yeah. I think we're done.
Awesome.
Love you too, man.
Yeah. Much love.
Much love. Peace.
Peace.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to A Tribe Called Red. So good to sit down with you guys. For everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Don't forget, A Tribe Called Red has been dropping a steady stream of singles this year. There's a link in the description of this episode where you can go get all the music, all their tour dates, and watch out for their new album coming early in 2020. I can't wait for that. My name is Willy Joy. You can keep up with me at Willy Joy or at Back to Back Pod on all social media, or you can hit me up backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address. That's it for this week. I hope you're feeling good. I hope you're having a good one. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Good weekend. Go out there, do something fun, blow off some steam. You know what? Blow off some responsibilities if you need to. Find a friend, have some fun, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you. All right, that's enough of that. And I will talk to you next week. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.